Do you want a new home? All you got to do
is move to Cali.
Move to Cali, cross the border.
That's the way to do her.
Money. Here we go. All this and more. The Self-Evident Podcast. All right. Welcome, guys. You got Mike. You got Matthew.
You got me, too.
Here we are. The Self-Evident Podcast.
Come on now.
It's good to see you guys. This whole daily thing. Let us know how you're enjoying it. Covering all kinds of topics, have all kinds of stuff going on. But do not forget, go to theselfevidenttruth.com. Check out our store, check out our blog, and don't forget, we are still doing our fundraiser, so please pray about going to theselfevidenttruth.com, click that donate button, and pray about donating, becoming a monthly sponsor, aka our Torchbearer Society, or maybe a one-time, or upping your monthly. Please, by all means, feel free to go do that. Mass, how you doing, man?
I'm really good. So yeah, like he was saying, you also guys can do text to give 772-242-0299, 772-242-0299. And I know some of you probably say, man, they ask for donations. Yeah, it's called a nonprofit and it's called a ministry. And so we need your help. And I've found that you have not because you asked not, and we're asking. So we also got merch, you guys. We got a bunch of cool new things. You should see the new designs we're coming out with. They're very cool. Thank you again. Oh, by the way, this costs you nothing. And I'm going to reiterate this point. See this? Most of them aren't subscribers. Why? Why aren't people subscribing? Do you realize that a comment and a subscribing does more for our channels sometimes than even the monetary? So if you can't give, subscribe and share these podcasts. Subscribe and share this with your friend. It's going to set them free. We want to preach the gospel to them, all those kind of things. And you guys can be a part of all that. So yeah, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm just setting stuff up right here.
Sure, man. So listen, me and Mike were talking about this. Forgive me that I haven't joined you guys in a while. I'm doing some transitioning right now out of the church world back into self-evident. So you guys know about that. But we're kind of transitioning a tad, and this was a show I thought, man, let me get on this one because I found out Oregon, and they since rescinded. That's why I haven't sent the articles. Kind of rescinded, but if you see the original flyers, it was basically only for migrants. Oregon was about to give $30,000 per applicant. There was like a $700,000. It was just under $700,000 grant given to this organization to give to illegal immigrants and others, or people who had the citizenship ready, but it wasn't approved yet, to get just all those things. They wanted to give illegals money to buy houses. Number one, they've already broken the law. Two, we're going to give them sanctuary housing in a state. Three, they're upending their own state constitution because there's actually there's an article in their constitution, in the Oregon Constitution, that says that the rights can't impinge or imprint laws that are passed cannot infringe on the citizen of the United States. Well, that's an automatic state discrimination. And so since they've rescinded, and it's like, no, this flyer misrepresented us. Not really, if you read the original flyer. But then Mike today was talking about California just passed, and guys, forgive me, I haven't been on the news much, but he said California just passed this thing about $150,000 for down payments on homes up to. That's good night. Talk about privilege. You white people, you got all that privilege. I mean, I'm sorry, now it's Mexicans.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
no, you have the privilege now.
Now it's
you have the privilege, and I'm going to go through how much privilege you have, Mass. So I just want you to know, I'm offended.
I want you to know that I'm more privileged than you now because I'm Mexican. Except I'm not an illegal. I'm an American Mexican, which means I don't even know how that works yet. But my dad was a migrant, but he was a legal migrant. A legal migrant, not illegal migrant, up to Minnesota, busted his butt, made a living for me. But now in California, shoot, we love immigrants more than we love Americans.
Well, yeah, because they're a whole new block of voters.
Heck.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said that out loud.
Yeah, so, I wonder how many of those strung out on the streets in Skid Row are going to vote.
Oh, my goodness, dude. Oh, the mess of California.
Unbelievable.
So we'll get into this. Here it is, California. It wasn't just a bill. It got voted on and passed because, of course, proves $150,000 in taxpayer-funded home loans for illegal aliens. For illegals. So now, not just the citizen, right? Because, of course, it's, oh, well, we help the low-income citizen. No, not just them. This means illegals can now get up to 20%, and all they have to do is be a first-time home buyer and first-gen home buyer. In other words, you're first-gen. Oh,
so let's talk about quickly how this bill, right? And I want to get into the deal here, but Kamala Harris is from there. A lot of our major federal political figures that have influence are from California. Newsom is on this whole chopping block there of people who could eventually run for president. What they're saying, just look at California. Now you got Tim Walz, who's a straight up socialist. And this is where they're going, is it doesn't matter about you anymore as the American. We're now using the Constitution, rewriting it basically to come against the American people and give precedence to illegal people. So we're now celebrating lawbreakers and punishing those who obey the law. Just food for thought.
Right. And some people may argue, yeah, but it doesn't do anything for the politicians. Yes, it does.
Yes,
because it actually changes Congress and changes the Electoral College, because guess what they use? They use the census. And if you remember, when Trump was in office, he wanted to change it so that the census asked whether or not a person was a legal citizen. But guess what? They fought him on that, and they made sure to defeat him on that so that you can't ask whether or not a person is actually a citizen. Census is purely by population. So this actually does affect and change the makeup of especially a state like California. Now, California is very blue, but it helps entrench them. It expands their influence on a national level. And these politicians, it helps them out. It really does. And so it is a perverse incentive structure to invite, and I think the number that I saw since like January, it was something like January to June of 2024, it's been over 8 million encounters at the border. That's insane.
Exactly.
8 million. Like, they're coming in wholesale, and I'm going to kind of bounce around on the slides because I think this is a perfect time to talk about what the UN is doing, because you might think, oh, well, it's just California and, they're just playing around. But if you look at the UN's 2024 Interagency Coordination Platform for Refugees and Migrants from Venezuela, R4V for short, plans on handing out $1.6 billion to 17 Latin American countries. Now, guess whose tax dollars helped that? And it gives money to 248 non-governmental organizations who are funded to hand out cash cards to migrants making their way to the U.S. border.
Unbelievable.
But we're supposed to believe that this is just pure, this is just the benevolence of Gavin Newsom and California's government to hand out, again, up to $150,000 to illegals. Your tax dollars at work.
I mean, I'm looking at.
What do you say? Yeah.
No. So I want you to think about this. Now they're using your. Okay, let me scoot back a little bit. Who would have thought that the fruit of your labors now would be used to fund your enemies to destroy the law? Like, think about this. This is how perversion happens. This is how bad sin is. This is what happens when we don't obey the laws. This is what happens when we start to say, well, look, we just want to help these people out of pure emotion. Then we see a gain out of it, especially from government, because government has no conscience. Government's run by a bunch of people who can't even run their own households. I mean, we've seen that time and time again. And not everybody's bad up there. I'm not trying to broad brush it, but look at the fruit of government over the past, at least just give me 50 years. How terrible it's come. our economy definitely has grown so much over the past 50 years as far as like its breadth and scope. But when you look at how government has grown through the advances of economy, who's getting richer and who's getting poorer? See, they constantly talk about the elites, but government has the biggest pull, draw, and expenditure than any person right now. You take the top billionaires, and I can promise you, put them up against expenditures of federal government and blow them out of the water. So really, they're saying it's those bad rich people, and it's like, wait a second, who controls the largest purse in the globe right now? I mean, I'm talking about in America, not the globe. In America. Mm-hmm. They do, right? So then they're blaming everybody else. And now we're saying in California, like Andrew just said this, Andrew Kolars, he said it's a similar situation in Minnesota, but under a different name. I can attest to that. When I lived up there, it was a very heavily, what's the population? They're not, well, they're Muslim, some, but they're not. It's very high, I forget the name, but very, very high populations of these people who, when you see their IDs, everybody's birthday is like January 1st. Everyone's birthday is, so it's like an illegal. They give them social security numbers, all this other stuff. But you're seeing that you're talking
about the Somali population?
Somali
okay.
population, yes.
Yeah.
That's it, Somali population. And so where I lived in St. Cloud, I think it was up to 40-something% of the population in that little area was Somalian, and it's like, okay, well, how do we do it? And then they started to kind of disregard. A lot of my friends who were tow truck drivers were like, we're not going into those areas. They freak us out, man. Like they start to huddle in masses and crazy stuff. So what happens is you assimilate people into our nation who are not assimilatable. In other words, they hated their own country to come to our country to try to do something different. But it's no different than people moving from New York to Florida. It's no different than people moving from California to Texas, bringing their same ideals that destroyed their state into another state. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. It's the same kind of a mental, what would it be? Psychological invasion this time. It's more mental. Like you're leaving your state for a reason. Well, why bring your ideals to Texas? Right. Why bring them to Florida or Arizona or any kind of conservative state? Why are you bringing those ideals there if it destroyed your state in the first place? You know what I mean?
And this whole 2 points on that. You had talked about, the government expenditures and all of that. And I wanted to look it up again. 5 out of the top 10 richest counties are right in the DC area.
Oh, jeez.
I'm leaving that out there,
Yeah, we're leaving it out there.
Yeah, just putting it out there.
I think too, when we're doing more for illegal immigrants, when we're not teaching them about American core values, if you're constantly providing for them, the whole idea of the American dream was for you to bust your butt, come here, start from ground zero, and build something.
Right.
We think by helping them, and I'm talking about the federal government here, they think that through all this other stuff, it's going to help them. It's actually going to make this worse. I think I may have told the story on the podcast. I have when we were living in South Haven, Minnesota, there was this cat that showed up on my deck. I didn't know anything about cats because I think cats are just little bags with eyeballs. I don't really like cats. And to those of you who are cat people, sorry. But it was outside. It was kind of cold out there. It was kind of one of those farm cats, I think. So like I opened a can of tuna, put it in a bowl, gave it to Carrie, said, "Why did you do that?" And I was like, "Well, I was hungry, right?" Guess what happened the next day? 2 more cats showed up with that cat. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. This makes sense. If I give, right, they're going to attract other people to come. And so really it's this idea that if we continuously give away things, people are going to come for the free stuff. Human nature is appealed by lust and greed, man. So it's like if we constantly appeal to their greed and their lust, guess what they're going to do? They're going to come and they're not going to give a crap about assimilation. They're not going to care about busting their butts and working hard. They're going to come here and try to take over and dominate. Listen, they're leaving their country for a reason, right? Let's just say they're all immigrants and they're all good people and they have all good intentions.
And all they care about is the economic opportunity of raising a family in God's blessed land of America.
Right.
Sure,
so
we'll go with that.
So then they come here and get everything handed to them. Have we thought about why they left their country? All they're used to is oppression and all this other stuff. What do you think they're going to expect here? What do you think they're going to do here? Matter of fact, I feel bad for a lot of these immigrants that are going to get this program because when government continues to oppress, they're already used to it. They're already used to it.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. They're already used to it.
And that's that's one of those dangerous things that, when you look at the grand scheme of because people probably ask this question, what are they thinking? Why would the government do this? They're still thinking with the mindset that the government actually cares, A, about the long term, B, about the American citizen or the American ethic, identity, whatever you want to say. And I think it was Aristotle talked about tyranny, and one of those moves of tyranny was mass import foreigners, because foreigners aren't loyal to the citizens or the national ethic or the national identity. They're loyal to the one who brought them in. And so if the Democrat Party is like, we brought you in, we paid for you, we gave this to you, well, guess what? Then those people are loyal to the Democrat Party. They're loyal to the ones who brought them in. They're not loyal to the other citizens and the rest of the nation. And you're watching this in the UK unfold very horribly in other nations as well, like Germany. And I'll go ahead and pull this slide. So supposedly, an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado has basically been overrun by a Venezuelan gang. And the Aurora PD and the city aren't confirming that it's happening or has happened. But there have been shootouts at this complex, and there, as you can see, there's video of guys storming around with guns, like no problem. And residents and even a council member have both confirmed that the apartment building has been overrun by the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. I don't know. I whited it, But the problem is people think it's just an issue of we need more people and people want to come into the U.S. But we're not getting the best and brightest.
Okay, go with that.
For the most part. Yeah.
Go with that, right?
Yeah.
The average American does not understand the Constitution, its laws, its own form of government. You ask the average American what the three branches of government are, what they do, what's the function of government, what's the duty of government, what is their state charter, their own state constitution, their own town charters, their county council charters, anything like that. The average person will say, I don't freaking know, right?
Right.
So then we're bringing in people who don't know any of that stuff and making them come and be a part of it. I'm just think about this. When people, and we got to do a whole different show about this, in the old immigration, when that used to happen, we used to have to learn the Constitution. We had to learn our way of life. We had to learn English. We had to learn all these things. Dude, there was actually tests in the 20s and 30s. I had a whole sheet on it. I studied this stuff like 6-7 years ago, where it was very strict, the things they had to learn. Like, hey, we want you to be God-fearing if possible, all these other things, like just these different things that we had to have them assimilate into the land that they're coming to. Well, shoot, if the average person doesn't even know their own laws and things like that, what makes you think the people coming here are out for our good as Americans, right, as an American nation? What makes you think they're out for our good? You have no idea.
And if you would have asked me year and a half, 2 years ago, I would have said, there's probably some loose global thing going on, but this is mostly just the U.S. hating itself and seeing an advantage. I think if you ask me now, I would say, no, this is a concerted global effort. This is something where those top echelons of power in the U.S. are sitting with those at top echelon of power in Europe and going, okay, how do we do this? How do we move these masses? Because at the end of the day, that mission really is globalism. And of course, it becomes that cliche phrase for the conservatives of globalists, but it really is a method to that.
There's an agenda.
There is an agenda. You're in a fast way, you are watering down the U.S. in terms of how many people in the population have a very individual nation ethic to it, a Constitution first ethic, and you're watering that down with people who are already used to globalism and they're used to oppression and they're used to third world living, and it's causing a ruckus and it's causing trouble, and that helps. It helps break down the morale of the citizen themselves. Mm-hmm. Because then they look around and they see all this crime and they see I was just watching a video on TikTok, and I wish I would have clipped it out for this, but it's this butch lady who describes herself as married to a woman, so a lesbian, and she is going nuts about Denver and how it's all migrants and it's too dangerous to even walk down the street anymore. And the cops won't go out on the street because the cops are afraid of everything going on.
They want to live, man.
They want to live, man. They just want to make their paycheck and go home. And so at the end of it, she's actually asking for people to donate to her GoFundMe so she can get enough money to move out of Denver. It's like, I have half a mind to send you money with a note saying, welcome to the conservative movement, you know, like this.
If that's what they're going to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And this is that problem is people, or you see those kind of gotcha videos on the street where, you know, the guy asks people like, are you for illegal immigration? Yeah, they need a home and they're just here because they want opportunity and they're good people and Trump called them all evil. And, oh, well, will you take this guy into your home? No, I can't do that. I can't do that. Oh, so who is going to?
That's exactly it, dude. It's exactly it. I think too, going back to this, like the maps you have are just awesome, right? But even in California, having SNAP cards, you can actually receive without immigration consequences. You can get a license, I believe now. You have Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, dude, why even give them why do they need to work?
Right.
You literally have a slave. Now, here's what's unique. Is this the government's ploy to own houses now? Government's way of owning property. Right? So they're giving the down payment, which means you're in hock to the person that gave you the down payment, right? What happens when they default on the loans? Who's on the hook?
Man, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
If you think about it, there's a bigger thing at play here. It's all about control. It's control, right? I don't put anything past government. You can call me a conspiracy theorist all you flipping want. I don't put anything past government. Government is insane, and they don't care about your rights or your freedoms. Do you know how I know that? Because they're not protecting the border. They're not protecting your free speech. They don't care about how you make money or not, as long as they get their portion of taxes. They don't care about you. That's, if you can't see, just any liberal, conservative, look back. You know me, guys. I'm not a fan of modern republicanism. Modern Republicans are just spineless. It's disgusting to me because they don't even understand the history of our country to allow half the stuff that they're allowing. So if you honestly look back at government, the only answer is our local governments. It's really staying in the town and the city charters and the county charters. Like, we have an ability to stand up against this stuff, and your sheriff in these elections. But the federal government does. If you can't see this, you literally are blind. You're blind. I get it. Under Trump, we had a great better economy, all this other stuff. Okay, cool. So that proves that's where your heart is. It's the wallet, right? That's cool. Do you? Just be honest about it. But we're looking at this going, government is about control. If you guys can get this in your head, government always wants to control. The more control they have, the more they can puppetize everything. And then you know what you feel like when they start controlling everything? You feel helpless. You're like, screw it, I don't want to vote. Screw it, I don't want to get involved. Jesus is coming back soon, right? The excuse from every Christian out there. Government does not care about you. Matter of fact, George Washington said government is force. It's not eloquence, it's force. They have to force this on you. I find it insane. Wesley Snipes can go to jail for 10 years for not paying taxes, but the average person who commits rape can get out 3 to 5 with good behavior. Right. So really, what's the message? What's the message? Don't mess with government. Really? Yeah. They don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about babies. They don't care about families. They care about ripping them apart in uteruses, but they don't care about your family. You know what they care about? The more kids you got, teach them how to work so they can get more tax money. Dude, literally, the medical, Robert Kennedy just said it. The medical industry wants your kids sick because they make money on it. And the federal government makes money on it because they're lobbied by him. Government don't care. That's why it's up to the citizen. Eventually, we're going to get to the point again, like they did in the revolution, where it's like, we can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. And Andrew just said it, soften judges make hardened criminals. Dude, that is Ecclesiastes. When sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore evil is set in the hearts of men to do it. If we don't come down on evil, it'll make it easier for the next person to do it. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And I think that's what we're seeing now. California literally has no law system anymore. They're punishing the good people. San Francisco, you can go in and rob a store at $1,000 a crack and not get busted, right? You know what that does? You know what that does? You know what that does to the business owner? It violates them. They're the ones losing, and then they say, "Well, just write it off. It's just it's a loss." It's also a loss for their employees. How are they going to make payroll? Go back to government. Go back to government. Go back to government.
And that's crazy, that's a slap in the face of the insurance companies, which, you know, I don't know that any of us really love insurance companies, but, you know, the government's telling the business, oh, well, you know, you'll have to cover that and maybe your insurance will cover it. And guess what? The taxpayer ends up paying as well. You know, and you end up funding your own abuse. And that's what this really is in all of this, is you're funding your own abuse day after day. And I'm with you, Massive. This incestuous relationship between government and business is horrible. And you got me turning on that homes thing of who benefits if those people default on their homes. Banks do, right? And the government backs it. The government backs it because this type of thing, oh, well, they defaulted, so the government will back the loan, and then therefore the bank's okay. So the bank can make money with no real loss or downside, which is what we saw in 2008, right? Now, 2008 was much more complex in how it crashed systems and took banks out, right? But what you're also watching is, I think you're right, as soon as all these people start defaulting, it opens space up for companies like BlackRock to sweep in and purchase up the homes, which a lot of people are talking about. Companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, sweeping up huge numbers of private homes, single family homes, and then turning around and renting them, which is exactly one of the missions of the more globalist process, is renting. We'll just rent it to you. We'll own it, and you don't own it, but you can rent it, you know? And I'm not saying that they have cornered the market by any means, but they are slowly gobbling all of this stuff up, you know? And you do kind of wonder, like, who's getting paid at something like this? It's not just kindness out of California's hearts for the illegals, you know? And if we go through all... I went down a rabbit hole on this stuff, you know. AB 60, this is driver's license purposefully for those who cannot get proof of residence. That's in California. Or California in January passed providing free medical care to illegals on Medi-Cal. Or the SNAP program, our government's own website has SNAP eligibility for non-citizens. In bold, it says you can apply or receive SNAP without immigration consequences.
Unbelievable.
And then in New York, taxpayer-funded card program for illegal immigrants up to $350 a week, which you may think, not all that much, but there's plenty of other incentives. And then, of course, you know what they're spending? You know, they're only spending billions. They're spending, I missed it, but spending $5.2 billion for 2 fiscal years, $5.2 billion on the immigration problem. And that's just New York, mind you, New York City. I'm not talking about the country. I'm talking about New York City on its own in the past couple of years, over $5 billion.
It's the new Ukraine. California is the new Ukraine, bro.
And then we got a San Antonio nonprofit was misusing federal funds that were being given to them to help house, feed migrants, give them aid, migrants. Well, they were using it to buy them airline tickets to ship them off to other cities for free. And these charities, Catholic charities, got nailed for that. And then back to the UN. And the UN is in Latin countries handing money to NGOs so that NGOs can give people what they need in order to make that big caravan exodus over the U.S. border, which then those people will end up getting housing, food, shelter, assistance, and may even get a loan to buy themselves a home. Who knows? This type of frontal assault on America.
That's exactly what it is.
And I get frustrated because I know I sound like the crazy conspiracy theorist, right? Like the guy on BitChute going, bringing in all the crazies, but
they're making the frogs gay.
They're turning the frogs gay. But it's like, how many times does Alex Jones end up getting proved right?
Oh God, dude, it's pretty nuts, man. Right? Like, there's plenty of things he's been not right on, or been late on, or I'm sorry, too early on. I will say though, I just want us to think, right? Let's go to the politicians. You don't care if they come in legally or illegally. You're willing to give them money, right? They can't prove that they're citizens in California. So let's give them an ID with a license.
Yeah, of course.
They don't need any proof of anything else, but doggone it, if they're going to drive a car, you need to give them a license.
Oh, and mind you, they can register them to vote. Because here's what happens. I can give you the form, and you can fill out the form. It's up to the government to then verify that I'm actually allowed to be registered to vote.
So if you don't have residency in California and you can't prove it, what address do you put down?
Good question. P.O. Box 120. And
or in California, 420.
There are a lot of questions about that specifically, all of these addresses that people are just putting on forms and stuff. But the thing is, it's putting the onus on the government to validate or verify whether or not a person is actually supposed to be on the voter rolls. Because once you register, you're put on the voter rolls, right? And they've been seeing this mass of people of this whole verification thing of, oh, by the way, we had 30,000 new people who don't match a social security card. But then it's up to the state to actually remove these people, right? Exactly. So these states, they don't have to remove them. So what happens is, oh, we'll fill out this form. And basically calling the bluff of the government if the government's never going to check. So then all of a sudden you have a bunch of voters who technically shouldn't be registered, technically aren't citizens, and nobody checked, nobody kicked them off.
So California is a lot like other businesses like Target. The only reason these guys exist and the way they can exist is not through tax money. It's federal funding, right? Yeah. The only way that they sustain is most state governments operate at a loss because we've become socialistic in nature, right? So and they'll say in Minnesota, Governor Walz is operating in a profit. He's also blitz taxed the entire state pretty good. Many manufacturers have left Minnesota State, and they said they had huge job increases where actually those were government jobs and the healthcare sector jobs, which government funds. Right. So it's not about jobs. It's crazy, right? But you're looking at it going, how do they survive if they're constantly giving out all this money? Well, it's the federal funding. Mm-hmm. Again, California, Minnesota, you watch it in Minnesota, buddy. It's you can't do this without consequence very soon. You can't do it. If you don't have a thriving economy, and again, I lived in Minnesota. I used to love Minnesota. I grew up in Minnesota. It was a beautiful state. But dude, it is literally now the land of socialism. Dude, it's crazy up there. And Andrew lives up there. Andrew Kolars does. I don't know what. I know he's trying to figure out if they're going to stay or go. I don't know. I don't know what people are going to do. But eventually we have to say, are we going to stay and fight, or are we going to leave and actually join a cause that's worth fighting for? We don't know. People in California, I know a lot of them. You know why they're staying? Because they feel led by God to stay there and fight. And dude, I don't think that's wrong. I think that's so awesome and biblical. We're going to give you some hope here in a minute, okay? I look at this going, okay, the enemy always is trying to do something like this to throw off the scent, our game, right? But dude, if you guys haven't learned anything from 2020, they overplay their hand all the time. You can keep doing this, but eventually it's going to crush in on itself. They're going to turn on each other, which is already happening in Chicago, right? Who thought Chicago would almost sound somewhat conservative by saying, get the illegals out of here? Who would have thought? They're calling out government corruption now in Chicago? Who would have thought this? Because you can't keep pushing agendas on people without them reacting. Eventually it's going to hit them. And that's what's been happening. So I'm seeing They do want a civil war. They want us to be against each other. But right now they're going against government. And that's pretty stinking amazing. So if Chicago can do it, imagine what California can do. Imagine what Minnesota can do. All these other things. And I know I literally think about what I say, and then I can hear people go, are you calling for revolution in California and Minnesota? Well, the government seems to not care about you and disparage you and destroy you, whatever it takes sometimes. You know what I mean?
There is that point where people are pressed against the wall and they have to make a decision.
Truth.
And I agree with you. Like, you look at Chicago, you look at New York, you look at these pockets of people who have been voting Democrat for decades. And they're so tired of it, but they've always hung on. And it's almost that like victim mindset of, I'll hold on and maybe it'll change this next time around because I got promised a hopey changey. And it never happens. And then the straw that breaks the camel's back is then people who have not been supporting these politicians are bussed in, are given homes, are given playgrounds, are given schools. And I'm telling you, this is happening. They're being housed in schools and playgrounds and police departments and all of that. And they're given money and they're given assistance. And now they're getting home loans. And the people who've been oppressed by these same politicians are looking going, no, it never was going to change, was it? You've now brought in the new favorite, right? And it's basically like a parent shoving a kid aside and going, the new kid's mine, you know? And
there you go.
What I'm happy to watch, it saddens me, but I'm happy to watch, man, these people in these neighborhoods are tearing these politicians apart. They're done. They're mad.
And politicians are listening.
Yeah.
You're not stupid.
And you are getting city council members, especially in Chicago, who are standing up and going, I can't do this anymore. I cannot support this anymore.
So there you go. There you go. So we think that we can't do anything because of the federal government. Dude, literally, it takes a bold citizenry to say, no, we're not doing it. Well, we're not going to give you funding. Great. Business owners are not giving us funding anymore. And we've got to do something about our roads. Okay. So are we going to pitch in here or not? You know, it's going to take a literal city and a constant. This is where I think it gets really tricky because people are like, can a city really change something? Oh, yeah, it can. But what it takes is, can the city trust its leaders enough to get themselves out of the way for that the citizenry to take care of that city? Can they get themselves out of the way to say, listen, we're here to protect your rights, not to tell you what your rights are. But, you know, if the federal government's pulling funding, then we may need to shut down some things like, you know, a good example here is in Stuart, Florida. I can hear it now, County Councilman. We have a thing called Sailfish Splash here in Martin County. And the government foots the bill for its losses every year. I'm talking about the local city governments foot the bill for that thing every year and its losses. It's up to, what was it, $1 million a year, something like that loses. I can't remember. Mike Circus was talking about it. So we would have to shut it down. Let's get a private business to do it. Let's get a private business to come in and buy it and say, hey, we're gonna make a park again, but it's gonna be run privately. It's not gonna be run by the city.
And if a private business can't do it, maybe it's just not feasible to do.
Bingo.
You know?
Bingo. Gosh dang, guys. We may have to go back to hoses in the backyard with big blue tarps and soap. You know, but just those little things. It takes a city. And Andrew's really saying here, we're letting them do it. Well, are we going to say no mas?
Right.
Are we going to say, okay, I'm not doing it? We have to run for city council right now. And you know me, man. I've thought about it. It's like, okay, do I run for city or town council, county council? Maybe. If that's what it's going to take, my wife would have to sign off on it. And I mean that not because she's like the head of the house. It's because we both are doing ministry together. Would that be something I can do?
And when you run, your family is involved.
It is,
especially
dude. The attacks. Politics, the attacks and all that other stuff and the decisions you make, they may not be popular, especially if you're about limited government.
Right.
People are going to get mad. You're taking away our money. Well, it was never yours to begin with. The government should have never done this. And it's going to take like what Justin Amash used to do in Michigan. Why did I vote no on this? Here's why. The role of government is not this. This is what they're supposed to do. That's why I'm doing it. He used to catch flack, but then he would get a lot of understanding. So we have to do that as well. Let's go to our city council and say, why are you doing this? Where in the town charter or the county council charter are you able to do anything like this? Has anyone ever challenged and said, why are they passing these laws and these bills? Has anyone ever done that?
Right.
Like sit and ask them. Like I did. I remember here with our sheriff in Martin County when COVID happened. I challenged him, like, what authority do they have to shut down businesses? And he got really angry with me. He's like, I don't have time to talk to you. And I'm like, well, I'm a concerned citizen asking, where do they have the authority to shut down business? Who gave them that authority? And they couldn't answer me. That's scary. So we just trust them at will? And then eventually the sheriff got back on the horse and said, yeah, I'm not going to shut people down anymore. I think he saw this is unconstitutional. But just like confronting that confrontation, you got to do it.
We're in a transition period right now. And
literally,
I'm going to speak darkness, but there's hope on it. It's going to get darker because people are waking up, but not everybody has fully realized the situation they're in. But the cool thing is, the more they get pressed, the more people are going to wake up, and it's going to take that for people to start realizing federal government has been doing it for us. Because right now, I think you've got a very weak, apathetic, lazy population that is so used to the federal government being expected to just handle everything. Government just handles it all. Government takes care of it. That there's no real sense of community or organization or, oh, we have to do this ourselves. So the darker it gets, I think the more you're going to see people start banding together in their communities to get the job done themselves, as opposed to having had to just let daddy government take care of all of it.
Ooh.
So I think you're going to see it get darker, but that's good because that means more people are going to recognize and realize we got to just do this ourselves.
Exactly.
There's no more sitting around letting the government do it all. You're going to see people fall through the cracks, unfortunately, because there will never be 100% of the population gets on the boat.
100.
But you will see a large group of people go, yeah, things have changed. I can't expect federal government. I can't expect the state to do this anymore. And I think we should see counties in the states start telling the federal government or the one over them, stop using my funding over my head. You want to use my own tax dollars against me? Screw you. I'm going doing my own thing. And you saw that a little bit, especially with DeSantis. You saw it in other states where they started to tell the federal government, no, you're not going to hold my money over me. Because that's the only power they really have, right? When you really get down to the nuts and bolts, outside of military action, it's money.
Yep.
Your money used
100%.
Against you.
And it's pushing us to that brink, you know? So guys, we'll wrap it up here because you're right. It's speaking darkness, but it's also speaking truth. It's speaking life. The bottom line is I can give you every answer in the world, but it does nothing without application. Sorry, dude. Like it's the design is us being active in government. That's the bottom line. And if you don't get involved and at least vote or at least campaign or at least challenge the people who are over you, or I should say who you've elected as a representative, if you're not challenging them and you're not seeing, and people are like, but I'm working too much, I'm this, I'm that. Dude, welcome to the club, but we all have a responsibility. If we don't do that, then all we're doing is just feeding each other in our brains, and we're just waxing fat with knowledge. That's all we're doing. But wisdom is knowledge applied. So let's be wise about what we're seeing and not being a part of it. We need to pray for our brothers and sisters in California who are fighting this mess, who are standing, and God's faithful. So we just want to say thank you again. I don't know if we want to wrap it up or not, but
that's good.
So just thank you so much for helping us and all your support, you guys. Again, if you guys can go to The Self-Evident Truth. I like podcasting, Mike. This is fun because it keeps us where we don't shut up. Guys, be a torchbearer. Thank you so much for all of you who have supported this $30,000 matching. I'm sorry, this $30,000 goal we're doing. We're still haven't hit it yet, so you guys can still be a part of that. If you go to theselfevidenttruth.com, theselfevidenttruth.com, it's right here down below. Right there, and you guys can be a part of it. You guys can give a one-time donation. You guys can do all that stuff. We also have where's that QR code? There it is, up right here, right up at the top, right above Mikey's head. You guys can donate with the QR code. Just scan using your phone. Businesses, if you guys want to give a one-time donation, we'd love that. We'll send you a receipt, all that stuff. And thank you again for all of your help and love. We love that we can do this with you guys and for you guys. And we'll continue to bust butt. If you can't go out and share the gospel for these people and kids, we'll do it. We're foolish enough to say yes. Let's go, baby. You know what I mean? And it makes no sense in the natural why we would go after a nation that legit, when you turn on the TV set, looks like it hates God and hates its foundation. But to me, that's exactly where we need to start. Because the earth was formed out of nothing. God formed it. So if we look at this, it's like, where are we at? This is chaotic. Well, the earth was without form. So it's time for us to form. It's time for us to be involved. So let us do that with you. Let us do that for you. Let's be friends. Let's connect. Let's chat. So again, theselfevidenttruth.com. Help us with a donation if you can. If not, please share the video, subscribe, be a part of what our team is doing. And be on Rumble, BitChute, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're on all those things, all of it. We're talking about going on Kick and Twitch to get the youth. I mean, there's so many things we have that we want to do that people aren't on these platforms for, and you can do it. God is faithful, guys.
All right. Well, we love you guys. We hope you all have a great day. And so, yeah, we will see you guys tomorrow. All right.
Bye.
All right. Love you guys.
Hey,
bye.